Hey everybody, I'm going to be trying to do another penetration test with the stack of magazines. This time I'm going to be using the 223 American Eagle 55 grain FMJ. Since I've already shot it so many times, my last test was the 12 gauge slug. This time I'm going to try and put the 223 right around here, so hopefully all goes well. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at what the 223 did. We got our entrance right here. So not a bad entrance, but it wasn't where I was trying to place it. Like I said, I wanted to place it right around here, so from up close like that at about 5 yards, it was hitting about 2 inches low, it seems like. So, but anyways, let's see how far it went through. Okay, let's just go ahead and take the first few magazines out and see the penetration through all that. Well, I guess I'm gonna grab more than the first few because they seem to be stuck together again, like usual, whenever a projectile passes through. So here's the first, about 15 I think. Let's go ahead and see what happened. So our 223 entered right here on the first magazine. Came out right there. Tiny little 22 caliber exit. Magazine 2, 223 entrance, 223 exit. Magazine 3, 223 entrance and exit. Here's the fourth magazine, 223, exit right here. And magazine number 5, entrance, and exit. So the exit's starting to get a little bit bigger now here on magazine 5. Here's magazine 6, it's all torn up. This is where the 32 ACP stopped. I marked on the top where all my tests stopped. Here's where the 223 went through. That's where it blew out the back. Pretty big hole now, look at that. Looks like it's starting to break apart into fragments or something by the looks of that exit. But anyway, here's magazine 7, entrance. The entrance is starting to look a little more weird, like there's secondary projectiles coming through with it because the outside of it's all torn and scratched, so it's definitely breaking apart by now, I'm expecting. At least, or tumbling slightly. Here's the exit. Magazine number 8. Still a pretty small entry. That's where the 223 came out. Here's magazine number 9, 223 entrance and exit. Starting to get slightly longer this way, sorta, which means the bullet's probably starting to either bend or tumble, if not break apart, like I've already mentioned. Here's magazine 10. This is where the 22 long rifle Aguila Interceptor stopped. So here's where the 223 went through. Exit. Magazine 11. .223 entrance and the exit, ever slightly bigger now. Here's magazine 12, I believe. Entrance, exit, even bigger now slightly. So definitely starting to open up now. Here's magazine 13. Entrance, biggest entrance so far from the 223, and exit. Magazine 14. Here's our entrance, and here's our exit. Pretty decent size now. It's probably nearly a 1/2 inch diameter hole, which is more than double what it was, 22 caliber. So here's magazine 15's entrance, and the exit, even bigger now. Okay, so it didn't stop on the first 15. Let's pull the next few out and see what happened. Out of all of my tests, none of the projectiles made it through this far except the 8mm Mauser and the 12-gauge slug. Now the 223 also. So here's where the 223 came in, magazine 16. Here's where the two 8mm Mausers came in, these little holes. This was the Romanian surplus steel core. This was the S&B 196 grain FMJ. And here's where the 12-gauge 3-inch Federal 1 1/4 ounce slug came in with its huge hole. And there's their exits, 223, S&B, Romanian surplus, 3-inch slug. So the 223 actually has a bigger exit hole here than either of the 8mm Mausers. That's actually sort of surprising to me. It must be breaking up a little faster. Now let's go ahead and look at the other one. Magazine 17's entrances. Like I said, 223 Mauser, 12-gauge slug. There's the 223 exit. Here's magazine 18, and there's where the 223 came in. The 8mm S&B FMJ has a slightly bigger entrance now too, so it must be starting to break apart or expand also like the 223. They both have a similar size entrance on this magazine. And there's the exits, 223, S&B, Romanian surplus, slug. And here's magazine 19's entrances, 223, and the exit. So far, up to magazine 20, you can't really tell too much of a difference between a 223 or a 8mm Mauser. There's both the standard FMJs. Mauser steel core has a slightly smaller hole though. And here's the exits. There's the 223. Magazine 21. 223, Mauser, slug, and the exits. Here's magazine 22. This is where the 12-gauge slug stopped. So the only thing that continued past this so far was the 8mm Mauser tests. Now the 223 also went farther. So here's where the 12-gauge slug stopped with this big dent. Here's where the 223 came through, the S&B 196 grain FMJ, and the Romanian surplus 154 grain steel core. So now the Mauser's blowing quite a bit bigger of a hole through than the 223, which is kind of expected since it's 196 grains versus 55, but let's take a look at what happened next. So here's the 23rd magazine. There's where the 223 came in, and then the Mausers, and here's the exits. So magazine 24. Looks like we got lead fragments here, or I might be mistaken, those were just magazine particles. But anyways, here's the entrances on 24. The 8mm FMJ is quite a bit bigger now, but there's the exits, 223. Okay, so here's magazine 25's entrances, 223 over here in the corner, and the exits. Impressive penetration from the 223. Magazine 26. Exits. The 223 and the 196 grain FMJ's exits are starting to combine now because they're expanding so much. Magazine 26. So here's magazine 26, and I believe there's the majority of the 223 projectile caught right there. So let's see. Yeah, there's no penetration on the next magazines. There's just a little split here, but after that it stopped. So right here on magazine 26, the 223 stopped, and there's the majority of its bullet. Actually just the jacket with some lead particles on it. So 223 stopped right here, magazine 26. The steel core Mauser came through here, and the standard FMJ Mauser came through here with its huge hole. So there's the 223's last hole. It's about maybe an inch around, and then here's where the Mauser came through. It's more than 2 inches around. So where the 223 stopped, the Mauser's still doing more than twice as much damage, it appears, on these magazines. So Mauser blew through here, the steel core here, the tiny hole, and the 223 stopped. Here, magazine 27, there's a tiny split here from the 223, but only through the first few pages, and then both Mausers blew through still, obviously, with a bigger hole than the 223 ever made. Magazine 28, I'll just go ahead and show you the rest till the first Mauser FMJ stopped. That's where the steel core went through, and the S&B FMJ 28. Sorry, I miscounted. This is actually magazine 30. I just went back and recounted real fast. So here on magazine 30, this is where both Mausers went through, and only one of them exited. This is where the S&B 196 grain FMJ actually stopped, this big hole here, and the steel core came through, and the S&B just put a little tiny split here on its last, on the 31st magazine, while the steel core punched through with a small hole. Even though it's small, it's still, this hole is probably about as big, if not bigger, than the biggest 223 hole that it created in the magazine. So there we have it. The 223 penetrated through 26 magazines while doing not very much damage compared to the other rounds.